There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no. Which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go. And we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
Hello, cousins. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Social Contract. I am Nicolette, and I'm here with my pal and yours, Jared.
What is going on? Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. Or afternoon, wherever you are. It is cold in most of the country, so I hope you're all in maximum cozy mode as you chill with us for about an hour today, and we go over some of the... It's even kind of
cold in Phoenix, where I'm in the Phoenix area, and we had, like, right outside my window here, I had a tiny little patch of ice. It was like about this big, like a couple of days ago, and that was truly a Christmas miracle.
Yeah, Christmas moment. I'm about to say the same thing, actually. That's hilarious. Unagi. No, that's yeah. So I know most of the country is pretty bundled up, but if you're lucky enough to be working from home, or you could be somewhere cozy, do something nice for somebody who has to go out in it. So we're not going to talk about the weather the whole time, but you know, when it's yucky, we definitely want to mention it.
We're going to talk about football. It was Super Wild Card Weekend, and
one of us is gonna. I know. Okay, I'm going to sit here and smile because I don't know what the hell.
The way that the weather affected football in my life, even though I live in Phoenix, I'm from Pennsylvania, so I like the Pittsburgh Steelers, and their game got moved from Sunday to Monday because the snow in Buffalo, New York, was as such that, like, they showed a picture of the stadium and you can't tell where the seats are because it's just a snowdrift.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. And people were coming in like as volunteers, and it's like, you know, they were so juiced. And it's like, come on.
If you want to get some freaking local power together, tell Americans wouldn't come together to unite under some common goal. It's like, tell them that their playoff game isn't going to happen unless their stadium gets scooped out. Suddenly everybody's showing up with shovels.
For real. Yeah, that's the way to get them. Like, get them there and then trick them into doing socialism. That's the way to do it.
That would make sense in Green Bay, which I know, like, yeah, you can add a million asterisks, but it is technically the town owns that team. It's like the only one, which is a technically publicly owned sports team. I'd like that for everybody. There'd be no more talk of like, oh, we're just gonna move the team to another city. It's like, you can't. We own the team.
We own it.
And you know what? We're keeping all the money. We're gonna give it out. All right, we're getting into fantasy land now.
No, that's actually pretty neat. I didn't know that, as a matter of fact. I mean, I'm not like completely sports illiterate. It's just that I really don't care about football. It's the thing.
Green Bay does fine. They're publicly owned, whatever that means.
The only kind of things I like a little bit of hockey, and big wave surfing's really rad. I'm into that, and some union rugby. I could do that, but Six Nations. But in terms of like being a sports knower, I'm definitely not. I'm a sports kind of a knower adjacent, and that's about as close as I can come.
If I want to get really cynical, I can say that my knowledge of sports it didn't really start this way, but it's partly become, if you want a way to be able to pretty quickly connect with not all, but a big chunk of working class people, you never make friends easier in like the freaking grocery store than when if you know just enough to have like a 2 sentence little, oh yeah, blah blah blah, this happened, hey, hey, ha ha, and barriers get broken down. People become very comfortable with you very fast if you even
Speak
know
the
about.
Yeah, the magic words have been spoken. That's really wise advice, honestly. If you can do, how about that sports ball, huh?
That's right.
And everybody just goes for it. But nobody wants to talk about big wave surfing. So okay, I get it. So football's the thing for sure.
Hey,
I
this
can
isn't
talk a
quite
little
sports. We did have one contest in the 2 days ago that will briefly. I just want to briefly mention that Iowa did happen. We're starting to get numbers
right, yeah.
in the election that we all know what's going to happen. What we all know
Sports
is going to happen
elections.
is happening. If we click over here, let me post up. I got a little screenshot from Google. Iowa happened, and shockingly, the Donald has won not just like a bunch of votes. He has over 50% in yet another very criticisms aside. I imagine if the Democrats got like 20 candidates to vote for, like they always get one, maybe two. I guess in the last Bernie Sanders one there were quite a few people, but that all fell apart real fast.
Really
We
fast.
got Don with 51%. DeSantis is second, which is weird. Everybody thought it was going to be Haley, 21%. Then Haley's 19%, so they have like effectively around the same number of voters. Ramaswamy 7.7, and then everybody else with less than 1%. Who the hell is Ryan Binkley?
That's a new one on me. Well, Trump won every county. That was the thing. It was like a complete shutout, which is what we were saying in the last episode. Is like he's got no real actual competition. This is an example of how things are going to go. He is going to be the candidate, and that's it. Whether you like it or not, that's where it's going. And my guess is he's going to be the next president. So
if you're into electoral politics, you have to remove yourself this fantasy of that Trump isn't going to win just because they've embarrassed him, but these various crimes, it's like, guys, Biden has crimes that doesn't stop anybody voting for him. Like, I don't.
Right. It all comes down to like sycophantic politics, or I guess we call them those guys stands now. But and that was one of those things for me that I was like, I didn't realize what it meant, and I was too embarrassed to ask, and it took me forever to realize what the term stand meant. So that one's kind of new to me. I only learned that like last year. I was thinking it was just like kind of like a bastardized stands with a D, but no, I understand it now. I get it now. But we're always learning. We're always learning. Things are always going on. So yeah, sycophant, stands, whatever terminology you prefer. But that's what this election's all going to come down to is Biden fans versus Trump fans. And I'm glad you brought up the sports, that it's so similar to that, because that's basically what it is. We're gonna just watch those people fight it out because everybody else is like, fuck this. I'm not part of this.
The thing to remember, you might like one team over another, but they are all under the NFL shield, and if a team decided to go out and actually start changing things, they would be simply removed from the NFL and not allowed to be part of the football championships and such. There you go. There's how I metaphorically connected these two things. We have two parties that are paid by the same owning class. So while we look at these things to be Trump getting in and Biden getting staying in, I don't think is going neither one of them is ending the Palestinian genocide. Neither of them is giving you health care. Neither of them is gonna do shit for working people.
And they don't even have to promise it this time. Last time they both half-assed it. We're gonna this, we're gonna that. And because they thought that like the words would work, and now they don't have to. They don't have to promise you anything. They don't have to say I'm going to do anything. They don't have to say we're going to sign EOs day one. They don't have to do anything this time, and they know it. They both know it, and that they're both just as bad, regardless of which one you prefer. And I think in both of our cases, it's neither. So, you can align yourself with one of these groups, but you're still basically voting for evil no matter what you're doing. And that's
if you truly believe that the Democratic Party is the good guy party, then the way now is clear. The only possibility of the Democrats winning in this or really any upcoming election anytime soon is by offering something to working class people, which is made difficult by the fact that in the most recent elections, promises were not kept. So do you just bring out the same promises again? It seems that they just keep coming out in lower and lower. Like they kind of just to do a lesser version of the promise from previous, and then don't do that one either.
More and more watered down. And this time, I don't really see either one of them having to make an effort at all. And Trump's never going to make an effort that he doesn't have to make, and he doesn't have to make any effort. Period. People love him or they hate him, and the people that love him will literally, slit their own throats for him practically. Like they will throw their bodies in front of him and to shield fire if they had to. And I don't see that level of love for Biden even by his strongest supporters, which is kind of weird, going both ways. But
20%, 20%, I think, of the basest, most base portion of the Democratic Party. Because you do see it, but I'm like, is this a bot? Is this like a real human? Because there's not a lot.
Right. Yeah. The super fan ratio is way different. It's very odd how people respond to Trump. I'm not talking about the liberal hate. We all know about that. I'm talking about just his super fans who are really ready to put them, their lives on the line for him if he asked them to. I don't even think he'd have to ask twice before they'd be lining up. And that's, I think, what the whole nonsense about the January 6th stuff still going on and on and on is about, is that he didn't specifically ask them to do anything. They just were like, we'll do it for you. We love you, and that's where that all comes from. And I'm not so sure that Biden could stir that same kind of.
Man, if there was some weird parallel universe where a bunch of Democrat super fans were pushing their way into the Capitol in order to get health care for all or so, wouldn't that be? I want to know my whole little thought experiment here is just I want to know, would the same people be like, oh, those were traitors who were doing or would they be like, yes, see, that is the good. Because in the last two elections, if we're talking about even the narrative of a blank candidate's supporters doesn't trust results of X election. It was 2016? In 2016, it was okay to say that the election was stolen. In 2008, it was okay to say that the election was stolen. Because remember, those were two different times where the electoral college system took away the popular vote. Yet you have not seen a single inch moved towards the elimination of the electoral college system, for instance.
Right, and that was always something that they would say, "Oh, we're going to do it," and even other politicians would say, and are still saying. I think it was I might have this wrong, but I think Adam Schiff said something about it recently. But just the idea of okay, don't sit there and tell everybody their vote matters when you're just trying to actually solicit funds for your campaign and yourself and your buddies. When in reality, your vote could matter less if the electoral college exists. That's just the way that it is. Plus, also, the Democrats didn't even hide the fact in the last election where they literally came out publicly and said, we will choose the candidate that we want. The end. So it's all just political theater in that regard. So get ready for that.
Let's check in on the Democrat primary. Oh yeah, they canceled all their primaries, and you're not allowed to run unless you're Biden. So guess who won?
Mm-hmm.
Woo!
Yeah. Super fun, super engaging. It's the vote is in your hands. It could come down to you. I'm so tired of the bullshit.
Sounds like I'm shit talking. By the way, look it up. In many states, like New Hampshire being one of them, because they have now canceled the entire primary in New Hampshire by saying that if you campaign in New Hampshire, you don't get any of your delegates even if you win them. So they've the slightly flowery language, New Hampshire, your primary no longer counts because they moved the South Carolina primary up earlier. And in New Hampshire's state constitution, I think, they say that they must be the first Democratic primary. That's in their rule book. So they're still doing it. But since the private corporation known as the DNC, and private corporations can make whatever decisions they want, just like Apple or Google could make whatever decision this is just business moves. They've decided, sorry, New Hampshire, your primary does not count. And there's other states where if you campaign, your votes don't, which is just, you can't say that only Joe Biden is allowed to run, but they can say everyone else is not allowed to run. And they're acting like it's somehow different now.
Yeah. And then, it's not even, that was just one example. The Electoral College stands in your way. Superdelegates stand in your way. States changing the rules stand in your way. It's an absolute through and through mess. That it couldn't possibly be more fake. And really, it's just a guise to fundraise and to gain money. And neither one really cares that much about losing, because then they can go into official fundraising mode and take all kinds of money. And you hear the stupid term dark money all the time. Well, it's out in the light. It's, there's nobody's hiding anything anymore. So it's whatever. Well, we're probably going to end up checking in just about every week as things change, with the election. So you can count on that. But in the meantime, Jared's got another really neat story for us. So I guess not neat, but it kind of sounds like an unsolved mystery story if it were unsolved or mysterious. But so I'm curious about this as well. So why don't you enlighten us on what's going on with this story? This was kind of confusing for me.
Absolutely.
Where it all comes from, how this happened.
The biggest reason I'm bringing this story up is because there are journalists dying every day. If we did a story on every single journalist killed in Palestine, we would have to do, I think, like one per day. Like, aren't they over 100 or so journalists killed? Thing to keep in mind, by the way, that was pointed out to me by other journalists in interviews that I've been listening to since I've been more and more embroiled in these topics. Journalist is not like a special. It's not like becoming like a doctor or like a lawyer, where it's these examinations you must pass and a title you have to earn through jumping through all these hoops. Journalism is like a verb. It's a thing that you do. Anyone can be a journalist if they are participating in journalism at the time. It doesn't matter if you work for an establishment media outlet or if you're a, quote, citizen journalist. If you're out there,
they let us do it. They'll let
facts,
anybody do it.
I would never say I would never elevate the things that I do to journalism, because that would, in my opinion, that's my view of it, at least, is that's when you're out gaining new facts, like in the field. You're out there getting primary sources, interviewing primary sources. Like, let's talk to the people who are there, which is definitely was happening with Gonzalo Lira. So all of that said, we've had all these almost every other day you have an American politician up there sending out some kind of social media message or email campaign fundraiser thing talking about how important it is to protect journalists. And you remember remember when, was it Jim Acosta, like Trump was really rude to somebody in the press room when they were asking questions, and the response in the media was like, Trump is ending the free press, he is calling journalists the enemy of the people, and he is going to remove, like, what is it, the fourth estate of our democracy, free journalism is dying because Trump has taken it out. And then in the Biden administration, you have journalists American journalists being killed and just no response. Right. Remember that lady who got shot in the face by the IDF, the Palestinian American journalist in Palestine, like before everything kicked off, like a couple of years ago, and just no response. Imagine if a Russian shot some random American journalist anywhere in the world. It'd be like, the nukes are coming, Moscow. Yeah. Like, we are going... Yeah. When they want to care, they care severely. It's a
real case of cherry picking.
When you have journalists that go out and do actual journalism, they suddenly do not seem to be covered by any of our little constitution or our supposed values. So I want to talk about Gonzalo Lira, a journalist who went to Ukraine to talk about Ukraine, which turned out to be not a great idea. I'm getting this from the Gray Zone. Very few people are going to talk about this just because he wasn't pushing a narrative that is convenient to the establishment. So as I read, it's going to be more and more obvious why you don't hear about Gonzalo Lira. A prominent commentator on the Russia-Ukraine war, imprisoned in Ukraine for speech critical of the country's government, has died after weeks of medical neglect by Ukrainian authorities. Chilean-American war commentator Gonzalo Lira died shortly before noon on January 11th, 2024, at a hospital in Kharkiv, where he had been imprisoned for 8 months since he was accused of justifying war efforts in Ukraine. Keep in mind as we read this, the crime he is accused of is justifying. So his crime is justification. It's not that he picked up a gun. It's not that he shot at anyone. He wasn't he wasn't at least accused of like spying for the Russian government or being a secret agent or something like that. The accusation is justifying, meaning it's a free speech situation here. Lira came to prominence in 2022 when he emerged as a critical voice in an increasingly dictatorial Ukraine. His arrest in May 2023 on charges of production and dissemination of materials justifying Russia's armed aggression against Ukraine helped to galvanize domestic opposition to U.S. funding for the war and led to calls for his release by tech baron Elon Musk and American political commentator Tucker Carlson. It's not that I give brownie points to Musk. It's just out of all the billionaires, he is the least awful on free. He's not a free speech warrior, but where the hell Bezos isn't going out talking about this? Have I done the line on you about a peasant behavior where it's weird that in America now what you have to choose is which of the 5 or 6 billionaires you like most, and then like swear allegiance to, like you're in the medieval era, and you're like, oh yes, Lord Bezos is my I serve Lord Musk, and then you get in fights.
Yeah, but I think that's probably where society is headed at this point. Like we're talking about like return to kingdoms. So
who are the heroes of America that aren't fictional?
Hey, so we got a comment that says that Lira was actually already living in Ukraine, and the war happened while he was there, and he was reporting on it.
Oh yeah, I guess in my characterization.
Correction, if that's the case. Well, the thing of it is no matter who's reporting on this stuff, it's not exactly like an open two-way door that you can just know what's clearly going on, and there's no question about anything.
That's an error in my characterization, teeing up the story, not something that the Grey Zone actually said. That's me in the lead up saying, "Who went to Ukraine to report on Ukraine?" That is, incorrect. How I phrase that.
Yeah. So thank you, viewers. Thank you, Mikhail. Thank you for setting us straight on that one.
A note written by. So yeah, he did not. He's not like, an unjust war is happening. Let me jump into action. But he was in Ukraine telling the truth about it. A note written by Lira and provided by his father to the Grey Zone indicates his death came after a nearly 3-month battle with pneumonia, a condition which was apparently ignored by his Ukrainian jailers until just weeks before his death. Lira's death was revealed by his father, Gonzalo Lira Sr., who had spent weeks pleading with the American embassy to intervene in his son's medical emergency. Emails reviewed by the Grey Zone show that after learning of his son's illness, the senior Lira urged the embassy to intervene on January 3rd. In messages to U.S. officials, he noted that Ukrainian authorities appeared to make an effort to conceal information about Lira Jr.'s health from his family and legal representatives. The medical warden in the pre-trial jail in Kharkiv is not giving information as to the state of his health, he wrote, concluding, "It has been 12 days since I knew his state." There's a whole odyssey with Lira because it goes from accused, put in jail, according to him, beaten and tortured mostly by other prisoners. That's how because at one point he is released on like on bail basically. And he's able to he shoots a video of himself because he's trying to flee the country on his motorcycle, and he pulls over. He's like, the last video you ever see from him is like, I am so many kilometers from the Hungarian border. I'm going to try to cross. In case I don't make it, let me talk about what's been happening to me. And then he details the treatment he's received as a prisoner over there. And the case that just pops into my head hearing about this. Do you remember Otto Warmbier, who was the kid who was
Yes, actually, I was just about to ask you if you thought that this was anything that was really comparable in situation. So we got the Unagi going today, bud. So yeah, go ahead. I was actually just about to point that out myself.
Otto Warmbier is the teenage. I'm pretty sure teenager. He was not very old.
I think early 20s, but they had him for a while, so he may have aged into.
Yeah. But he was on a school trip he was in North Korea on some kind of trip, and depending on everything that happens with North Korea, it's like, well, is that what happened? Is that what not? They say he ripped a poster off the wall, which I don't think is disputed. He's like, oh, I wanted to keep this as a souvenir. There
was video of him taking a poster down in a hotel, I believe, but a
blurry, black, not easy to see what's happening video of some human walking up and taking a poster, and it's like, is this like a weird video? Did North Korea make this like a fake video of a guy? Because either way, taking a poster off the wall is not a death sentence. Like, that's kind of the ludicrousness of the situation. And the next time you see Otto Warmbier, he is getting transported back to the U.S. basically he's in a coma, basically already dead, and it seems that's why they sent him back as shit.
What was particularly strange about it, that I remember tuning into the details, that after they did bring him back, he wasn't in a coma like we would describe being in a coma, like comatose, but he actually his eyes were moving and he was screaming periodically, and his parents said that there was something that had happened to his teeth, that is some of his teeth had been removed, and they couldn't explain like, or they couldn't or wouldn't were explaining his exact state. And that again, it was hard to tell. It's like, is this a mongering thing? Are we getting the full story here? Because back at that point, everybody was reporting on it, but you were still really only hearing like the CNN narrative of things. So, and then they said, the North Korea said that they had given him some cold medicine or something, and he had some sort of crazy reaction to cold medicine. So the question was at the time, was he tortured? Was he kept in conditions that something had happened to him conditionally? So yeah, no, that again, we don't know. When you're relying on someplace like in Ukraine's not exactly like I said, it's not exactly an open door the same way North Korea isn't. You don't know, like if you're left up to the media's description of what's going on, you don't actually know what's going on. So it does seem very oddly similar. But at the same time, I remember thinking in the Otto Warmbier case, like it seems kind of odd that North Korea would do that in the face of pretty much having like a bad look internationally anyway. So why would they go the extra step to make things worse diplomatically? Not that they didn't, just that, that was the question I think that arose for me at that time. And I know that Ukraine doesn't care how they look on the world stage, period. So they're not, they do seem to have some sort of, and Israel seems to have this as well. They have some sort of notion that Americans are going to willingly come and fight their wars, or that the United States government is going to draft Americans to fight their wars specifically. Not that I would put that past our government for sure. I think they're just like, they can't wait. I think they're chomping at the bit to try to make a draft happen.
That's where this shit stops, because you know that because of the negative space left by statements by our leaders who talk about how, the Ukraine war is great because look, we haven't used a single American, which is right. the leaving out of, would you like us to send some Americans?
Right, yeah, other than like the people who volunteered and were like, I'm going to go do war, yeah, okay, fine, go.
The American people are not the workers, like, because now we kind of all know the game now. We weren't down to really go fight in Operation Desert Storm. That was like, and that's like stuff that started in Vietnam. Like nobody is really willing to just send their kids over there. Like, oh yes, let our children go die to protect X number of square miles of Ukrainian territory. Like it just gets so it's unless you can tie some of this directly to the American people, which you can't because it isn't actually a war for freedom and democracy to save the world. If it was a war to save the world, I could see you being able to convince people to go and fight in it, but everyone knows it's just for money. It's like, XY corporation needs like for empire reasons.
Yeah, there's so much more connection between people now. That people aren't buying the narrative like they would have before when they were just restricted to a few sources of news who were controlling the narrative.
You can get people to go fight Hitler Nazis because it's kind of like I don't really even need to make the argument. How abstract are the conflicts now where it's like, okay, because we want to maintain the supremacy of the U.S. dollar, your baby must now go. It's not going to work.
We need you to make babies for war.
So, read a little bit more from this article. The following day, Lira was finally brought to the hospital and allowed to see his lawyer. The defense attorney left the meeting with a handwritten note from Lira explaining his situation, which is believed to be his final written correspondence. The letter reads, I have double pneumonia, which is both lungs, as well as pneumothorax and a very severe case of edema, swelling of the body. All this started in mid-October, but was ignored by the prison. They only admitted I had pneumonia at a December 22nd hearing. I am about to have a procedure to reduce the edema pressure in my lungs, which is causing me extreme shortness of breath, to the point of passing out after minimal activity, or even just talking for 2 minutes. The thing that was not similar was to the Otto Warmbier situation is the overall reaction. Like the Otto Warmbier situation, which, from everything I know, kind of justified. Like I'm certainly not like, I'm not an Otto Warmbier truther who's like, I don't believe he didn't die. I don't believe that his death was not at least partially due to neglect from the North Korean government. At least it certainly seems to be. That is not the reaction you get from this. The reaction you get is nothing. This is just not even going to be mentioned. That like, hey, so Ukraine, who we must send money because they're this amazing democracy. They're the democracy in the area. Only thing holding us back from the frickin' Russian orc Mongol hordes that are going to take over all of Western civilization. It does shit like this this is who the people who are freaking plastic wrapping people to poles, who are pulling 50-year-olds off the street to go fight in their armies, the people who take journalists and stick them in a prison and have them beat up by other prisoners and then they get pneumonia and just let them die. Like, that's the amazing regime we're trying to defend.
Right. What a mess.
Unconvinced that his son would receive proper medical care in Ukrainian hospital, Gonzalo Lira Sr. continued to plead with the embassy to monitor the situation. You can even look where the gray zone, it's like, talk about journalists, people actually doing journalism. I don't know how they get in the White House press room anyway. Like, it seems like they would have just, like, kicked him out by now.
No! Get out!
Because they kick people out of the press room all the time.
Yeah,
remember, Trump kicked a guy out, Jim Acosta, once, and we had to pretend that he was the Jesus Christ of all of journalism. But this guy kicks out people like the Biden. There's the African correspondent who they didn't ask a question for like a full year, and then he's like, "I demand to answer a question." They're like, "Get him out of here!" Like, they kick him out, no problem. How does the gray zone keep getting people in there? They must know how to like be just polite enough, I guess.
Yeah,
but they asked about Gonzalo Lira, and the response was, "I don't know about that." Next question, like, it was. Sounds like I'm exaggerating. That's almost basically exactly what happened. They have no time to talk about that. Some Americans abroad you're going to hear about forever. Like, and then other, like, if you're a journalist, you better be conveniently helping out the State Department narrative, or they're not going to come and get you. Because you know that one call from Joe Biden and that, like, Lira is just here living his life.
Right.
Not like,
we're supposed to be these governments are supposed to be colluding. They're supposed to be leaning on us. We're giving them all these money and weapons to just, do whatever with. But so if that had happened, just the State Department could have made a phone call and it could have just been over that quickly. But it's the whole matter of dissenting opinions, of not going along with the mainstream narrative, and that isn't helping them. So that's exactly why nobody cared, and then their official response was so.
We don't know who this guy is. Well, I think because you definitely do. Like, they're aware of this stuff. That's their entire job. Is it's like intelligence, counterintelligence, narrative control. But it's it is unfortunate. Like, the only conclusion I can take from this is it is extremely unfortunate and saddening that this kind of thing is going to have to happen hundreds more times before any like the journalists in Palestine who are still sending frickin' shaky cell phone footage of the atrocities taking what's wrong with me? Video footage of the atrocities happening, just to then have like, oh look, my whole family is dead. Oh look, now I'm dead. Like 110 so far times over. If that isn't happening, you don't have everybody in the streets yelling about ceasefire. Like, that seems to be the major difference now, is the information is instantly available, whether that is convenient or inconvenient for the empire. And you aren't going to be able to rally people to defend America when they realize that defending America really means defending Raytheon, Lockheed, BlackRock, Vanguard, companies that as soon as America is like squeezed dry of its last drop, will just move to another country and repeat the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
They want to do it to China. They're really hoping they can get in and be like, we'll all escape to China where there's tons of rich people. Like, we can do it. And then what do you do when we'll go to Mars and we'll go.
Yeah, dude. For real. Like, that is just the dumbest shit possible. Like, I'm into space. I like NASA. Like, I'm into it. I always have been. But at the same time, it's just like, give me a fucking break. We don't have clean water in a lot of places here. The earth is dying, and we're allowing companies to scrape it completely dry for their own benefit. And the government and the media are helping them do it. So, I really don't care right now about space or about asteroids or about the idea that people could go live on Mars, which is not going to happen. So just I wish that we could take like even like a slight bit of that focus and put it back. All these billionaire idiots trying to go into space. Like, okay, you go, but leave all your money and assets behind so that we can fix the goddamn planet.
It shows like the out of touchness, which if you go from a scientific socialist perspective is technically positive, because what are the workers going to line up behind them? Is that the vision that's going to animate the mass movement of people to go, oh, I will get to go to, it's the frickin' Look Up movie. It's like one of the good points it actually did make, which is people aren't going to be, it's like, no, they're going to rebel against that. They're normal people are repulsed by the idea of just, sorry, poor people. Good luck. I'm going to Venus.
yeah. It's nonsense. I like sci-fi and I like science as well, but it's just that it is so nonsensical to think that we're going to colonize another planet in our lifetime or like 10 lifetimes from now. It's just not going to happen. The technology is not there. You know, we barely even went to the moon. And I swear to God, I'm taking to the streets if anybody starts stealing crap out of the moon and starts for profit mining the moon. Leave the moon alone. That is off limits. Stay away from the damn moon. But that's my, like, I don't know. I don't even feel like that's a fringe opinion. I feel like everybody feels that way. Like you are not allowed to have the moon. That's ours. That belongs to everybody. You can't have any of it. But you know, I think I have to digress on that one for now. But
the place where our massive treasure is placed, like as humanity, where our like resources are spent, are like, where do our hundreds of billions of dollars go? You can't have those like we can't move for. Yes, morally, there are many arguments for why we need to end the empire. The practical reason to end the empire is that it is now just a cap on human development. Humanity cannot develop any further because we all have to continue to have fights over who gets to financially, just in all ways, who gets to be the dominant class, who gets to not be the dominant class, and it's a smaller and smaller group of people. And like, you can't get to space without working together, and the kind of working together required would undermine the evil empires. So we can't do it. Like, we can't even get electricity to all of Africa, for instance. Like, there's places in the U.S. that barely have electricity and freaking access to plumbing.
And everybody can't have air conditioning because we can't even run our planet right. So you think you're going to Mars? You know, keep dreaming.
They replayed, I think it was Obama, like when he just got elected, talking to a big meeting of like African leaders, talking about just saying out loud, look, you guys can't have cars and air conditioning or you're going to kill the world. And it's like, Obama, you have 3 mansions.
Right.
Like, maybe if you had 1 air conditioner and not 100,000, we could maybe spread this around. Like,
or think of new ways to do this, to cool things down so that we didn't even need it. If we could cool the goddamn planet down. But, you know, I think this is probably...
Get some nuke plants going. You'd be amazed how many air conditioners you can run without creating a single ounce of carbon.
Yeah, there's, you know, like, this is definitely something that I think we're going to have to dedicate an entire show to coming up. Yeah. But, you know, we do want to talk about green energy and green technology and things like that as well. So
drive us to a different topic, or I'll ramble on this.
Well, yeah, actually, you know, what I wanted to bring up in this segment is something we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. Is like, I think, well, for the record, what's to be said is that marking about the 100-day mark of the conflict in Gaza, there was a march last Saturday, which would have been the 13th, and in Washington D.C., and it was called the National March for Gaza, and they have the estimated total of attendees, despite, you know, flight delays, weather, the public transit getting shut down, people, you know, every way possible to try to keep people from attending, they still managed to do it. So the attendance estimates are around 400,000. And we're close, you know, there's close to 500,000 attendees on a march, and which is not unheard of. But it is for something like this, for an international issue that globally affects a small part of the world, rather than, you know, Americans thinking, you know, we need to do something for ourselves, something like this. So when we started the show, we wanted kind of to not just gloom and doom everyone all the time and be like, everything is shit and we live in hell, because we all know that already, or we wouldn't be here. But the idea is that we wanted to try to show ways that people are doing things like on a small scale to make things better, kind of how we're trying to move towards an idea of socialism and away from colonialism, away from capitalism, away from predatory capital. Well, I guess those are the same, one and the same. But the idea is this. Now we actually looks like we're seeing it in action in a big way. People are really uniting behind, and not that only this was the only protest either. We've been seeing the massive protests all over the world calling for ceasefire. But at this point, ceasefire is that, you know, we need to go much further than that. Stop this acquisition of the land, stop the acquisition of their resources, you know, stop, you know, because we're not just talking about literally stopping shooting each other, or most, you know, we won't know who's doing most of the shooting, but we're also talking about it is a genocide in the way that Israel is running a starvation campaign. They're stopping supplies from getting in, and they're stopping water from being available to people. And there so many posts we see online that I'm not going to put here, but you've seen them, of people, the Zionists, like, thrilling at the idea of literal children being killed, and making comments on posts about hope that they suffer and they all need to die and things like this. So it's not just about stopping shooting. It is about ending this extremist mindset being funded by our government and the UK government and our allies, basically also Canada and Australia. So this might be the first real socialistic push of our time, where people on the individual scale have come together and thought, like, this is horseshit and we do not need to be part of this anymore. So just for the size of it alone, because when you look at Gaza is one of the most populated places in the world, density wise. And at present, 85% of the population has been displaced and 50% of them are starving. And that's just what we basically know. And we know this because of what Jared brought up earlier, is we're seeing it in real time. And although they've tried to cut off their internet and their power and things like this and stop the message from getting out there, we know what the IDF is doing. We know what the Israeli government intends. We know how the basically widespread sentiment is about it for people who subscribe to Zionism. And once again, I want to be clear, Judaism and Zionism are not the same thing. It's just like every religion has their own extremist brand. And this is the extremist adaptation of Judaism. So you don't conflate Jewish people with Zionism. Zionism is its own evil thing that needs dealt with.
It's a religious nationalist movement. It's the reason that in Israel you cannot a Jewish person cannot marry a non-Jewish person, and various other weird little rules. The idea being that if you aren't Jewish, you aren't allowed to be part of the state, which if you just flip that to any other religion, it just gets weird. Like,
oh yeah, so,
like if you reject the idea that America is a Christian nation and only Christians should be able to live here and vote and marry, like,
which is, I know, what this country really wants. Basically, a large portion of it is trying to put everybody in that boat. But think about, the pushback about fundamental Mormonism, for instance. The people that live in the big communistic situations, or commune situations, I should say. Don't conflate that with communism. But and then they restrict women's rights, and they do a lot of really nasty stuff behind their closed doors. And they had a leader, Warren Jeffs, who is in prison. He's not dead, I don't think. I think he's still in prison. But the point is that there are always these fundamentalist factions that use religion for their own purposes. And in this case, it is, as Jared says, combining it with a nationalistic point of view. But let's also not forget that Israel is not a legitimate country. It's a settlers colony trying to overtake the area of Palestine for many, many decades at this point. And they are now coming to task for what they've done on the world stage, wherein they were tried by the South African government for their crimes. And it's kind of murky to see what's going to come of that, because there was also some, and this has been actually a little bit confusing online to people. People are excited about this, but some posts are saying that the South Africa, meaning like the South African government, like United Governments, are calling have now served paperwork to the Biden administration saying that we're, going to, hold you accountable for your role in this. But that's not actually true. It's actually like a group of lawyers who are trying to bring action civilly, like in civil court, against the Biden administration.
The International Court of Justice.
Yeah, in the International Court of Justice. So that they're not speaking for the whole of Africa, the whole of the world, or anything like that, which some posts online will have you believe. That doesn't mean it's not a good thing. We're moving in the right direction mentality wise, but probably nothing's really going to come of that. I imagine that America, the Biden administration went har at that one, and then just threw it aside, not taking it seriously or anything. But at this point, we're looking at something that we've never really had before, and it sort of started with the Vietnam War. Because people were coming back and telling what had happened. Survivors, soldiers that had been drafted and and so on, were saying, no, actually, this is what's going on. We're doing this for acquisition. We're doing this at the government's behest. Everybody's dying in horrible ways, and it's going to be horrible for generations. And then people started to say, well, we don't want to go on with this. And that's the first real pushback the government really saw in terms of their plans, their ideas. So if you fast forward to now, we are in a situation where we are connected globally more than we have ever had been before. And we can see these things in almost real time happening. And there's really no doubt about what is happening and how horrible it is. We really can't escape it. And that the reason why I think that people have been protesting so much, and I know we all can't take to the streets and we all can't make these big national marches and be part of history in that way, but sharing posts and talking online and keeping the conversation going is also vitally important to getting the message out there, to sharing it with people, because I know for a fact, we all know people, we can name them off right now in our lives that don't know anything about this, who are not paying a single seconds worth of attention. I, talked to someone not long ago who were like, I saw some people protesting. I don't know what they wanted. It's like, okay, well, where do we begin here? Because I can't even get into this with you right now, So I know that there are people not paying attention. And yes, I know people have to work and they have to invest in their own lives. And that's what our government is counting on. We talked about it in the last episode about, I didn't care if Nixon was fucking up. If you saw our last episode, you know what that was about. But people now are seeing, just as Jared said, that this is for corporations. This is for the enrichment of the politicians and the media doing their job. This is about money and about power and acquisition. It's not about people. It's not about freedoms. It's not about religious freedom. It's not about anything. It's not helping people out of a situation. It is literally about money changing hands and further enriching people that already basically own all of the capital in the world anyways. And people, you can't have capitalism without colonialism. And that's what we're seeing here. They're basically the same. We're seeing that Israel, with the help of the Western countries, America, Canada, the UK, Australia, we're seeing them be helping them establish this presence in the Middle East, basically to make sure that we always have access to the Red Sea to pass capital through, which we know is stopping. It's stopped up right now thanks to Yemen, which I think is really great. A very small, very war-torn country, really putting up a good, strong fight, trying to help. So
you immediately can see where, like, what causes a violent reaction from the U.S. empire, because it's not the violence coming from Israel. It's not the genocide. It's the Houthi. I hate that they keep saying the Houthi rebels. It's like, that's the government of Yemen. The most recognized, like 80% of the people in Yemen live in Houthi controlled areas. That's the government,
right?
The Yemeni government, the Houthis.
It's a good thing. Like, people think that, like, when you hear that, I am so intolerant of it. Like, if I hear anything on the news come on and I'm like, just turn it off. I can't stand it, because it's just like, you cannot believe unless you hear it. You're seeing one thing online, right? You're seeing it in real time. You're seeing what's happening. Turn on the national news or whatever, and you will hear the most asinine, flipped version of events that you can even, like, it's hard to even imagine, like, how fake the shit is that they're talking about, because it's just so beyond, like, it's not even grasping for straws. It is so much stupider than that. But those people are the people who control the narrative for the masses. We have to think about all the people who don't know about our show, who don't know about RBN, who don't know about Hardlands Media going through their issues, who don't know about Grey Zone, who don't know about these other outlets, or don't go on Twitter and they're not seeing these things, or other social medias. You can't even talk about this stuff on Facebook, for instance. You'll get all your accounts banned, or Instagram. Those are just out of, and that's what the biggest user bases are for, I don't know. I don't actually know the numbers on Twitter right now. I know there's been a lot of changes to Twitter, like user base, but obviously Facebook and Instagram are going to have massive viewership, and they're the ones that are heavily censoring anybody having these kinds of discussions. So with TikTok. With people wanting, moving further and further towards a globalized system, they're no longer buying these manufactured narratives. And that's how we end up with a protest that's almost 500,000 people in one city at one time, not to mention the other hundreds of protests going on all around the world. So you have to ask yourself, is this specifically about one group of people being persecuted, or is this a bigger movement about people being tired of the bullshit, about having their tax money go and just get thrown down the Ukraine toilet, or arming Israeli forces to the teeth to, what was the whole mess about Biden giving free access to Israel of our weapons stockpile? That is insane. That is absolutely insane. And I've heard, I don't know if I didn't really follow up because I don't know if it's necessarily true, but I guess that is potentially illegal to do. So maybe there's going to be some movement.
Well, because you got Biden doing they'll argue that they didn't, but it's that they bypassed Congress to immediately get funding for strikes where everybody's over here. The number we have to, like, things are happening too quickly now for the propaganda to even work, because it's like, where was the parliamentarian there? The parliamentarian didn't stop it. Like, we've been told over and over why we can have nothing positive, no movement in a direction that helps working people, that takes off any of our economic pressure. We had the child care tax credit, gone. We had a student loan pause, gone. Can't do any movement on that. Can't get anybody health care. Can't get anybody, like, price controls out. Can't bring the price of eggs down, whatever the hell. Like, it's less and less affordable to live here.
But throw open the vault doors to all the weaponry to say attack people who can't fight back. Sounds
no
great.
Problem. We can get through all those rules and red tape within a minute. Like, within an afternoon, that is solved. But healthcare is going to take 600 more years of voting blue, and then eventually maybe.
Exactly. And it just, he did circumvent Congress, and that's right out of the Nixon playbook. That's what Nixon and Kissinger did literally in several events when they were, in the Vietnam conflict in the greater area. But that's exactly the same situation at this point. But they were able to, if it weren't for Nixon recording every goddamn thing that he said like a psychopath, and not knowing that we would ever have internet or anything like that later, like thinking he was some kind of pseudo spy or whatever, then we wouldn't know. We probably still wouldn't know about a lot of the things that he did and he was involved in. But nowadays, they don't even hide it. It was national news that Biden was throwing open the vault doors to say, come and get what you want, and completely grease Palestine and with our hearty thank you. That's we're all about it, because they have resources that we could benefit from potentially. Israel is short on water. They need clean water. And then there's also natural gas, and there is oil to be had, which we're still stupidly clinging to because there's still money in it. And the whole reason that there's so much pushback against green technology is it's for free. Like, other than the equipment, like, they don't know how to charge people and make the money off of it the way that they've been able to do for centuries at this point off of dinosaur bones. So...
And I always I bring it up because I'm obnoxious. That includes nuclear energy. Nuclear energy was famously called too cheap to meter, and I know it doesn't get bundled in with green energies, even though it is almost non-emitting. Like, when you compare like a frickin' coal plant to a nuke plant, it's basically non-emitting. Like, the amount of material and waste that you have to go through. It's just because conveniently carbon waste is just sprayed directly into the air. So there's no big glowing green barrels of coal waste, even though the actual output of harmful material is so much higher. And we're thinking of plants that were made in the frickin' 50s and 60s, which are far less efficient than a plant made in 2024. But it takes too long. Well, you were saying that in the year 2000, and if you would have started then, you would have had a shit ton of them built by now. So, like, start, please. It's a nearly infinite source of clean energy. And if you're going to ever have conversations about freaking clean energy, do it. Just do nuclear. Just
yeah, that's the way I think to get it to the masses. And then there's a lot of fear mongering around, and there is reasonable fear around, nuclear spills, 3 Mile Island and all this. The fear is reasonable, but we have come so far technologically wise that is much less of a concern than it ever was before.
And who knows that? All of this, nonsense I say, are natural gas companies, are fossil fuel corporations. And I think that they will purposefully try to get people's eyes away from nuclear, because, if suddenly we had a bunch of nuclear power, you would not need the millions of tons of coal that are getting burned every year or so. And, their overall money would go down. A nuke plant enriches your community because you can't export you can't just have, we'll have one guy operate the nuclear generators. Like, no, you need like a whole town to support that. And but unfortunately, it does not have massive profit margins at the top. You don't make oil money off of a nuke power plant. You don't make coal money off of a.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm agreeing with you. Continue.
No, that's it. That's exactly right. They are the big. You shouldn't be confused about. Of course, Israel Zionists want to wipe this, this other people out to have their land.
They want a pipeline, and they did find natural gas in Palestine.
But you shouldn't be confused by the fact that we have a vested interest. We, meaning the Western countries that I've listed, a vested interest in supporting this, because we could kick back from that, and that would again lessen any kind of intake from natural gas intake from Russia, for instance. If we could find a new way where we could completely collude with that country that say, okay, you're gonna give it to us first, right? We get it first, then they could keep all making money. And we're talking in the trillions and probably up into the gazillions at some point. Who even knows? Because that's why we're always behind these types of things, to try to find out ways to steal from other people who can't fight back, steal their resources, and use them against our enemies. And that's exactly what I brought up earlier about why I was meaning the national rally, because this is not just about people standing up, and rightly so, standing up for a marginalized group of people who most have never met, don't even know any Palestinians necessarily. And just if you go just a couple of decades back, the primary, and there are like Christian Palestinians and Jewish Palestinians, of course, but it's primarily a Muslim religion, so that they subscribe to, if they do. So that was something that was not welcome here in this country. If you like I say, go back a couple of generations, there was lots of Islamic hate crimes. So we're just now kind of exiting that idea through the idea of globalization. But this really speaks to a greater and really good news in that way. It really speaks to a greater sense of people are connected, and they're looking for an end to colonialism and a rise of globalization. We don't, and most people do not see the Palestinians as some kind of threat, or that we've been told that they are. And all of this is about control over a shipping lane, plus natural resources that we could potentially benefit from. And this is obvious to a lot more people than it ever has been before. And you are seeing a lot of people talking online in like TikTok videos and things, saying that like, we know what they're doing, and they're also, I think the Democrats are heavily banking on the idea, two things. One, that this is just the thing right now, and then everybody's going to jump on the next thing when we manufacture the next problem, and then we'll forget about this one. And so they think it's just going to blow over, and then we're just going to go back to whatever, believing in the Democrats or whatever. But the second thing is they're trying to take the idea, the old time idea, pretty much back to World War II, that wartime presidents get to stay in office because people are so invested in how they're handling things. Well, nobody except sycophantic people, super fans, are thinking that Biden is handling this well. His approval rating is at an all-time low, the lowest it's been since like George W. Bush when he was in the war. And I don't know why they didn't look back to that and be like, that didn't work out very well for them. That he did get reelected, but he's always going to have that horrible reputation. But it's like, this is it's a cash grab. Get in, get out, go live your life. Why did Nancy Pelosi stay involved for so long when she could have just gone and rolled around in her cash vault like Scrooge McDuck or whatever? Because you could just keep doing it. It's addictive. It's gambling, but you always win. If you're the house, you just keep winning. So that's why we have these 80, 90-year-old geriatric politicians, and that's not to say they shouldn't have a voice as well, but it is to say, or that young people wouldn't go the exact same route. It is to say our system is absolutely through and through corrupt, and that people now, through the lens of helping the Palestinians and standing up for the Palestinians, which is great, are seeing a bigger picture. And that's even better. And that might be the biggest socialistic move we have seen in our lifetimes. And I hope it is. But I think it also might be something that is just, it's like we're seeing it. It's happening. We finally have something to gravitate towards. Because the George Floyd protests were way, way, way bigger and way more widespread, and affected people domestically here because it spoke to it wasn't just about people standing up for what happened to George Floyd. It was for the greater fight against police brutality and their ability to just do whatever and make six-figure salaries, brutalizing and terrorizing people. And on a side note about that, a lot of police in this country, a lot of police trainees and groups that are trained by the IDF. So you see a lot of overlap, and you watch a video of the IDF roughing people up and slamming them to the ground and whatever. And, like, yeah, we're great. Then you see the exact same thing happening here. It's their tactics that we're putting into employ. So in the spirit of trying to tell you something good and trying to find the good side about it and trying to find where people are coming together, this is it, I think, in my estimation.
I see a lot of that's where I retain my optimism from. I spend not a lot of mental energy on domestic politics, certainly not elections. But if you look at the international situation, at the same time, there's 400,000 Americans hanging out in D.C. For the cause of anti-war. You have, I think it was a million plus Yemenis in their capital who have just been in the streets, just staying in the street. They support their government's action to do a blockade against Israel. Because remember, it's not that the Houthis are out ripping people off of ships, torturing them, blowing up their whole thing. Like, that isn't what's happening. They've seized some ships, they've redirected them, like, into Iran and other places. And I don't know all of the details, but it's, you go to the port, you get the people off, you send them where, it's not that, then they're arrested and murdered and executed for being on the ships. These are peaceful, this is economic warfare. This is Yemen increasing the price of doing business with Israel. And if you haven't heard of that tactic, I want to introduce you to Cuba. America has had an economic blockade on Cuba for almost a century at this point, and nobody's like, and therefore we should bomb the United States in retaliation for this economic action. Because that's what I see now, because that garners support for, of course we have to start bombing Yemen because they are terrorizing our ships. And it's like,
Right.
So products, they are fighting an economy, and so in response we're going to kill a lot of people because we've been bombing airports in Yemeni cities. But look at that. Somebody's standing up and doing something good.
Right, and you can't blame these other countries who are constantly war-torn and terrorized by the West, most primarily, for wanting to square up with us finally. And I say us, I don't mean us, I mean our government. But, it's not us. We're not doing it. That's
their
exactly
economy.
right.
They immediately are attacking, I can't just say finance capital, but capital. If you're taking out shipping vessels with products and in many cases weapons, they're like, look, a shipment of weapons going to Israel, we are going to stop that shipment from reaching them. That's a pretty radical pro-peace action, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's, those of us who are in agreement in following these stories, we're completely, for that kind of action. Like, you have to look at these people and say, like, well, they're getting called terrorists because they're interfering with capital and making the ships have to go all the way around Africa. Boo. And that's going to make prices higher. No, it's not. The companies decide if the prices go higher whenever the fuck they feel like it. It's not going to interfere with anything ever, period. They're going to decide, they collude, and they're going to decide the prices of gas and everything else and keep squeezing people because
be nice to your landlord.
Carte blanche to do so.
It's like, don't be mean to your landlord. They're going to raise rent. It's like, they're going to raise rent anyway. Like, I can do it.
Right. Yeah.
They've already proven. All of our price increases are just because companies wanted it. It's not even really correlated to anything.
And then they hoard the resources. They don't care. Yeah, of course, literally brass tacks. It is going to cost money to go around an entire gigantic continent, right? That is a fact. I'm not saying that that's not true. What I'm saying is what it's going to cost them versus what they can ultimately squeeze more people for. It's in their best interest, really, to just like, that, because it gives them an excuse. The news gives them cover, and the government comes out and does press conferences and goes, well, those damn rebels, if you just let us bomb them all, we could go right through, so no, it's wearing thin. It's not working anymore. And they don't understand these old world tactics don't work anymore. They're still stuck in, they got Nixonitis, I think. God damn, we talk about Nixon a lot, or I do at least. But they do. They really have this mindset of like, why isn't this working? These 80, 90-year-old people are like, why isn't this working? It worked when we were in power, when we just got started. So that's where we're at. And I want to see more of this because I don't see it going away. I see this as momentum building, and I really hope to see the message continue until we see movement, positive movement, and the marches continue until we see positive movement, and the globalization. People also start making those connections more on their own, because I think that's really where we're at. It's seeing through the ruse. I won't even say like seeing through the veil or pulling the wool over. We're not buying it. People are not buying it anymore, and I think that no real government is equipped with dealing with the whole world saying this is bullshit.
Yeah. The isolation is final. That's why the criminal court, like the court cases that you mentioned earlier, that's what makes them have any kind of relevance. The International Criminal Court, its history has been basically a parade of black people. Like, they just take African people and atrocities, aren't convicted. Atrocities, aren't convicted. But the U.S. very conveniently is not a part of that criminal court. Russia isn't. Israel is. Like, this is now that's why it's the International Criminal. It's not the Hague. I don't think it's like the other one, because the U.S. has the Hague Invasion Act. The funniest thing, which is if they ever try to bring up America or one of America's allies in the Hague for war crimes, America will invade the Hague militarily. That's a George W. Bush policy. Very funny. If you ever try to accuse us of shit we did, we'll kill you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what in the hell? Like, you can't. This is a system that's like, you look at the system obliquely and you say, we can't fight this. Well, we can needle it. Like, no, we can't fight this.
The entire world is doing straight up legally, like, look, we in a very serious and civilized fashion have brought our evidence against, and like, it's so much harder to argue about this calm, like, look, here's what we say they did, here's the evidence they did it, their defense is we should be allowed to because. And who else is our friend? We have the US and the UK. What was it? It was like the coalition of the willing again, but it had a different, it's like Operation Freedom Fun Times or whatever they called it. And they initially thought they were going to get half of Europe on it and some of South America. And eventually it was whittled down to who it is now, attacking Yemen, the US and the UK, which is basically saying the US and the US is going at, like, it's two of the same guy, two different hats. They're the only people willing to join this coalition. And just a few years ago, you at least had people symbolically pretending to go along with empire stuff, and it's just less and less. You have alternatives now. You have BRICS. You don't have to go to the World Monetary Fund anymore if you want alone. You can go to frickin' China. Like China or not, the fact that there is some kind of alternative now is being a net positive for the world, because they aren't being, it isn't a gun to your head. Now there's somebody else who's like, hey, I won't put a gun to your like, you have a non-gun to your head alternative so far. Who knows? They could turn out to be just as evil as I am told by my government as that China is. But for now, they are the less evil alternative.
Yeah, and if we look at that utopic view of things, which, Jared, I like that you always say, like, I don't like talking about that because it just makes people sad about what we don't have. And that's true. But if you do look at it, like, if you say, like, okay, somewhere, how the people speak and America gonna get taken down a notch and the playing field becomes more level. There's no downside to that. Why can't Russia prosper? Why can't China prosper? Why can't America prosper? Why can't we all do it together at the same time? Why is it constantly a game of one-upmanship? Or why are you hitting yourself? Because it could just so easily be everyone succeeds. And that's really kind of where the idea of socialism and communism come together. Yes, we all have to work. Yes, we are all in a society. Why can't that society be the whole world and everybody working together, and everybody that needs something gets to have it, and everybody that has something gets to share it? Why can't that be the ideology? So I think
mathematically it can. Remember that morals don't have to be a part of this. You don't have to want those things because you are kumbaya, hold hands, everyone in peace. It is because it is literally possible. Like, mathematically, we have the tech already. We are in a post-scarcity society. Yes. We just have to reorganize our distribution of resources so that we actually hit that. Like, with current technology, no one has to starve, no one has to sleep outside, no one has to freeze in the winter. right now with no advancements, no future. Heck, in 1999 we could have been doing this, like, and we're even farther. And every year technique does get better. They're like, oh well, we have to zero sum game it because if we all get together and everyone eats, there's no competition to force society forward, and then we get overpopulated and everyone dies. Like, as if there's like not work to do, as if there's not improvements to be made. They need people to make. Why don't we build a big old freaking railway that goes around the whole? I've seen all these maps of like across Alaska, through Russia, down to front. Like, why don't we like unite the world in an efficient trade system? Why don't we stop, send a t-shirt across 10 different continents so it can then be sold 80 feet from where it originally started? Like, there's all these inefficiencies and developments in the system that we could be doing if it was run via with the goal of maximizing humanity, maximizing human, I don't know, everything.
Capability. Yeah, we're all hamstringed. We are all put in a position of being, experiencing wage slavery and having our health insurance tied to our jobs so that we can't leave, or having to be in abusive relationships with people, or live with abusive parents, children, because they can't go, there's no opportunities for them to support themselves. So and that's, I guess, mostly just a U.S. problem. A lot of other countries don't really have this as much. But the idea is that, like, we are hamstringed, all of us, by not getting to work together, by not getting to use our strengths. Okay, so say everybody's needs are met. Then we're going to get to a point where all the smart people are going to come together with their super smart ideas. And then maybe we figure out another way to do things in another place and another areas to apply this knowledge into getting even better, into getting further. And if you really do want to go to Mars, that's how it's going to happen, by allowing all the smart people, including the unincorporated ones who are just, right now logging hours at the Burger King or whatever, and not getting to put that knowledge into power. If you don't tap these resources, you're not going to Mars just because a billionaire says he wants to go. That's the long and the short of it. And what's supposed to happen when we get there? You think capitalism is going to happen when we get there? That anybody's going to go all that fucking way and not see their family ever again, or ever see Earth again, or pet a cat, and they're going to go there and then they're going to start immediately persecuting each other? Probably. But
the Expanse.
Now it comes out of my mouth. Maybe I'm a little bit wrong about that one. But probably, I mean, people would be like, we can't live like this again, But still, it's still out of the question, But the fact of the matter is that we are in a place right now where we might just be, as a society, especially here, where it's so hard for people to get the message, not only because they're like it's their own fault, but because it's what they're being inundated with, how they have to live their lives, that we might just be uniting on a front of, we're tired of war, we're tired of supporting the war, we don't even have health care or clean water or good food here, yet we can get up every single day with the benefit of getting to see people with their faces blown off, and then know that we paid for that, and that we have no real leadership, representing us here or on the global stage. And now we're tired of it. So whatever the motivating factor is, whether it's this or whether it was another thing, and I think it also helps that this came right on the heels of the Ukrainian stuff. They had people pretty good with the Ukrainian stuff, but now this has been another kind of whole thing where it's like, well, no, you don't really have any clear basis of doing anything. Because I was with you when you said Russia was the bad guys. But who's the bad guys here if they're just people trying to live? So the narrative is different, and it happens so fast. And then we've constantly got Biden doing little sound bites about, well, Taiwan and China, and we will. So it's like, oh, okay, we're queuing up. Or we're queuing up for the next one when we bust out of here because this one didn't work. So I think that whatever gets people in whatever capacity, whether you're marching, whether you're posting, whether you're talking to people you work with, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's just align, let's align on the fact that we don't like where things are going. If it's healthcare is just the hill you want to die on, that's good too. If it's, we need a shorter work week, we do, that's good too. If we need, the social safety nets, that's good too. It all works. Let's just start putting these things together. And I think we might be seeing the beginning of that. And I'm super juiced about it, if you couldn't already tell.
And I agree. And I'm optimistic for the same reasons. I think we are going to have change within our lifetimes, not in 50 years, I think, because we're hitting all these breaking points at once. And it's curious to see what will happen. Yes. And, be involved to try and push it in a positive direction, because things could get worse.
Oh, I think they will, but the fact of it is now pushback has started. I would have said before this conflict, I would have said we're not going to get there. And I probably had said it publicly. We're not going to get there. But now that people have found something to unite over, I think that I was wrong, and we might be seeing the beginnings of a socialized mindset, a globalized mindset. And that's the only way forward. That's the only way to end any kind of climate change issues. That's the only way to pull people out of poverty. But I think that I probably yelled at the camera a little too long about this one today. So, do you have a song for us today, Mr. Jared?
I'm lazy and cold. I'm not singing today.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. Yeah. That's just when you feel like it, I think is when we should do it. But then I think we could probably call it. So thank you everyone for being with us today and listening to our super valid points, and stay in the streets, stay making posts, keep talking, support these independent media resources and things, so that we can keep talking and everybody keep talking. And if you do want to send money or some sort of resources, contribute to Palestine, just try to do your homework and make sure that they are not scams and things like that, because it's very hard to be getting resources to them at this time, unfortunately. So I know that your heart is probably in the right place for those of you that want to try to send money and things, but
Doctors Without Borders seem to continue to be legit.
Yeah. Just, and always avoid the large, across the board, avoid the largest charities. They always are.
That's why that one's like an outlier. I would assume that Doctors Without Borders, they must be someone's like, well, all their people keep staying and dying, so they seem in it for the right reasons. I don't know.
So yeah, just do your homework. Look on social media for the best ones with the best reviews. There are definitely people who track these things. And try to stay warm out there. And like I said, if you have the benefit of working from home or that you don't have to go out in the cold all the time, try and do something. Have some hot cocoa ready for someone coming in that has to check on your neighbors. Take care of strays outside. Just a pan of food and water that you change because it's going to freeze. But you could really
check on
be healthy.
the old people around you. If somebody's over 60, make sure they didn't
keep an eye out on old people. Keep a look around, or maybe shovel a driveway or two if you are able body enough to do it. And that's just making things a little bit better and doing a little bit more for each other in a small way, because everybody's going to feel good afterwards. So thank you for joining us. We will be back next week with more rants and good topics, and we look forward to speaking to you again. Of course, you can always reach us on our social media if you have topic suggestions, questions, comments. We try to address the comments that come in, but sometimes we get a little full of ourselves and just go on and miss it a little bit. But we do appreciate you, and we couldn't do this without you. So make sure to check out the other RBN shows, other RBN Long Beach shows, and we will be back with you next week. So stay warm, take care, and take care of each other. So bye, everyone.